Hello and welcome to Week 2, Big Rican on Sports, Buckeye pregame live, coming to you 30 minutes before kickoff in Week 2, going to Happy Valley. For the first time in a long time, this game is not doing a whiteout because of COVID. As a matter of fact, there was an Ohio State player who had a positive test when he got to Happy Valley and then a negative test after that, but he will not play tonight. So here we are, Week 2 already in the Big Ten. Happy Halloween, everybody. It is October the 31st. And for people watching, you'll notice my clothes are not my normal podcast pregame stuff, as I pay tribute to the head coach of the 2002 national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, Jim Tressel, in his patented white shirt, red tie, and gray sweater vest to go with the 2019 Big Ten championship hat. I don't have the hair like Tressel, so I wasn't even going to try that. So first, let's break down what happened. Let's review what happened last week, and then we're going to get into some of the preview for this week. Not going to keep you on long as we got kickoff at 7:30 for this big game that, as I said, usually is in the whiteout. But this year, obviously, with COVID, not going to happen. So last week, a 52-17 win over the University of Nebraska. As great as that was, as good as Justin Fields was, I'll get to him in a minute. But let's first talk about what I saw that I did not like from this Buckeye team last week, and that is the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. For years and years and years, Ohio State has been a dominant on the line of scrimmage on the defensive side with defensive ends and pass rushers like Joey and Nick Bosa, and, of course, Chase Young last year. Well, right now, they don't have that standout guy yet. They're hoping it'll be Jonathan Cooper, who's wearing the number 0, the Block O jersey. Sorry, I'm clearing something out on the audio device. But they haven't found it yet. Now, one thing I was impressed with was the linebacking core. After Nebraska's first drive, they played very, very well on defense, forcing a couple of turnovers, fumbles, playing well down the field. The other thing that bothered me, for the first time in a long time, the Ohio State quarterback led them in rushing yards in a game. Now, obviously, last year it wasn't going to happen with Dobbins, and it wasn't going to happen the year before with Dwayne Haskins. But this first game, Justin Fields, who they don't want to run that much, had to run a bunch. And not all of it was designed. A lot of it was getting out of there because his offensive line, which is a veteran unit, and I thought would be better suited this year than last year, did not play that great. Now, give some credit to Nebraska's defensive line, They were trying to get pressure on Fields all afternoon, and they did a few times. But Fields, being the Heisman candidate that he is, he was almost flawless. 21 of 22, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and the one incompletion was on a ball that Chris Olave actually caught and then got absolutely hammered on in the end zone, and he ended up dropping the ball. All in all, a great first week. Fields was outstanding. This Ohio State receiver core is going to be off the charts good. Returning Olave, who was through concussion protocol and will play tonight in Happy Valley. Garrett Wilson, the true sophomore, who had over 120 yards last week and a touchdown catch on an absolute dime from Fields into the end zone. Smith and Jigba, the true freshman 5-star recruit from Lake Travis in Texas. He made one of the best catches I've ever seen, going into the back of the end zone and finding a way to get his foot down in bounds. What a phenomenal play. They called it out of bounds at first. They went back and looked at it, and sure enough, he got his foot in to score Fields' second touchdown, and the final touchdown Justin Fields will be a part of on the day. They get the other touchdown from Jack Miller, the freshman recruit. One of the top 3 quarterbacks that Ohio State has gotten in the last few years, including Fields. I think if it goes a different way tonight, you could see C.J. Stroud, who's the other freshman quarterback that's behind Fields. All in all, week 1, phenomenal effort by the Buckeyes, a huge win against a good team. Nebraska's not there yet, but they are a very good team. I tell you what, Christian McCaffrey's little brother is an absolute monster. He is going to be so good. And as good as he's going to be, he's pretty good already. Couple of huge runs. Martinez, the quarterback, had a good night. It's the name. Sorry. So that brings us to this week and week 2 of the Big Ten season, where the normal whiteout in Happy Valley, Ohio State, Penn State, the national primetime game of the week. Let's start here. Penn State lost its number 1 pass rusher, and then their number 1 defensive player behind him decided to opt out this year. They had a rough time against Indiana. Now, was it because Indiana's getting better? I think so. But is it also because Penn State is down those defensive players? Yes. They end up losing in overtime to a very good Indiana team that right now is in a dogfight with Rutgers, which, where did they come from? What they did last week, beating Michigan State. Again, the key to the game against Penn State is always going to be controlling the line of scrimmage. And I know I say it every Sunday with the Browns, and I know I said it if you caught me on the Row 7 podcast when Alex and I were talking about it the other night, which dropped yesterday. If he controlled the line of scrimmage, this Ohio State team can win this game. Master Teague and Trey Sermon are going to have to run the football this week, I fully believe, against a very good Penn State defense, even without Gross Matos and the other defensive player. And his name is escaping me right now. And that's on me. I should have known that. The kid that opted out. But here's the thing. You've got to find me a defense that's going to stop Justin Fields. I don't know if there's one in the Big Ten right now, especially after what transpired today in Ann Arbor. As Jim Harbaugh and his khaki pants fell to Michigan State, who lost to Rutgers last week. So much for Harbaugh getting his guys in there and being a national contender. Maybe Ryan Day is right. Maybe we are going to hang 100 on him this year. But going back to this one, because we can't get to December 12th without winning tonight. The key to this game, again, is going to be in the trenches. And I really think the Ohio State defensive line is going to have to put pressure on the Penn State quarterback. Miller had a decent game last week. Steve Clifford had a decent game last week against Indiana. 24 of 35 for 238, 3 touchdowns, but he threw 2 interceptions. That is something that James Franklin's teams have not done a lot of in the last few years, and that is turn the ball over. In the big comeback a few years ago at the Horseshoe, orchestrated by J.T. Barrett, it wasn't turnovers as it was special teams and defensive clamping that got Ohio State back in that game. Special teams are going to be huge tonight. I think that too. Remember, 2016, that game is lost by Ohio State at Happy Valley in the whiteout because of a blocked field goal. The next year, you get the big block punt for Ohio State in the game where they had the big comeback. The next year in Happy Valley, Dwayne Haskins goes 90-some yards down the field to throw the touchdown to KJ Hill. These last few games that have been, and last year was the only one they won by less than 20-some points, except the game they lost. The last few years, this has been which defense makes a stop when. And for the last few years, it's been Ohio State's defense that's done that. But it's been Ohio State's defense that's done that with a premier pass rusher. Take your pick. Is Barrett Browning going to be that guy? Because he wasn't last week, and it bugs me. Jonathan Cooper, again, is Jonathan Cooper the pass rusher we're going to need on the end of this defensive line? Is it going to come from the linebacking core? Pete Werner and Tuff Borland looked okay last week, but Penn State is not Nebraska. Penn State is a better team than Nebraska. You really have to they really have to figure out who's going to be the guy to take over for Chase Young. Now, no one is going to beat Chase Young. Not going to happen. Number 2 overall picks, or 3, whichever one he went, and him, both Bosa brothers, they don't grow on trees. Ohio State's gotten the last few, which has been great, but unfortunately, they don't grow on trees, and you have to figure out a way to find these guys. I think they'll have it. I think the Buckeye defense as a whole, with Kerry Coombs coming back and being the new defensive coordinator, took a little bit of a step back. But it's expected. When you lose first-round draft picks in the secondary, when you lose first-round draft picks on the defensive line, this is going to be their first test of the season. Having said that, after last week, Ohio State is a double-digit favorite on the road against Penn State in Happy Valley. In my lifetime of watching Ohio State football, I don't believe I've ever seen them be a double-digit favorite going into Happy Valley. Even the years Penn State was down. You know Happy Valley is a tough place to play. You know these guys get up for this game, even if they're not having a great season. So a double-digit favorite, that's going to be tough. But Penn State couldn't stop Indiana. And Indiana is not nearly as good on the offensive side of the ball as Ohio State. Look for this game, if Penn State gets a couple scores down, to get out of hand very quickly. My buddy Nick, who I hope is watching, because I told him I was doing the Tressel thing, and then I sent him a picture, and he basically called me a clown because I did this. But it's all nothing but love. So here's the thing. Penn State has a good defense. They have a decent offense. But their big pieces that they lost in the draft, I don't think they've replaced them either. They played okay last week, but when you give up that many points and lose on the road to a team that is inferior to you, your holes have been exposed. My father just texted me and said Penn State got hosed last week. They still gave up almost 40 points to Indiana. But that was a bad call at the end of the game. No, my wife, who doesn't watch sports at all, even said the same thing. Like, that was a horrible call. How is that a 2-point conversion? I will give him that. That was a bad call. But Penn State is good enough to have not been there. But they turned the ball over. They gave up some big plays. Actually, I take that back. They didn't give up big plays. As Joey Galloway said on ESPN this week, they lost a game where they only gave up 15 yards of total offense. They beat themselves. You cannot give this Ohio State offense more than one shot. It's like giving a good hitter an extra strike. He's going to hit the next strike out of the ballpark. And that's the home run hitter that the Buckeyes have in Justin Fields. It's the home run hitters on the outside they have in Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. That's the home run hitters they have at the tight end position in Farrell and Ruckert. And hopefully we get to see that home run hitter in Trey Sermon, the transfer from Oklahoma. What do you say now? Yeah, they did throw too many INTs. And no, I'm not saying that. My mother says I look cute. My wife says I look cute too. So my prediction for tonight, as much as it's going to pain my father for me to say this, I like Ohio State to cover. It's going to be a multi-score win for the Buckeyes. The biggest advantage Ohio State has tonight is that there can't be a whiteout. This is, in my opinion, the toughest environment to play in. Is the whiteout of any environment you play in as a visiting player. I firmly believe that Ohio State can win this game. The defense has got to step up. They've got to put pressure on Clifford. They've got to hit him, and they've got to force the turnovers that Indiana forced last week. Sean Wade is going to be huge on the outside. Look for him to have a big game. The safeties are going to have to play the middle of the field because Penn State's offense, ever since they had Mike Gesicki, loves to go to the tight end. For keys to the game for Ohio State, win the battle up front on both sides of the ball. Run the football. Be Ohio State football. Get Sermon and Master Teague going early. Teague may have scored 2 touchdowns, but Justin Fields was the leading rusher last week. I honestly think they should start Sermon and bring Teague in second. Sermon is more of that Dobbins-esque back. Not nearly as good as J.K. Dobbins. Let me start there. But he's that Dobbins-esque back. He's the home run hitter. I think if he can he can make some moves at the line and get into the second level a lot quicker than Master Teague can. He's that bowling ball, ramrod, run it down your throat type back. They need to take advantage of the secondary of Penn State with their speed. These two guys, as Urban Meyer called Olave and Wilson, are fast. They can absolutely fly. Olave's trying to get his draft stock up. Wilson understands that he wants to be the man. Tonight's your first real test, kid. Tonight's your first real test, because there is nothing like going in a Happy Valley at night. And it's Halloween, and it's a full blue moon, and we are 15 minutes from kickoff, and this Buckeye fan is jacked. Join me tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. as we do Browns pregame live for week 8? Yes, week 8 against Chucky and the Las Vegas Raiders. As promised, the 100th episode of Big Rican on Sports will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. I am working on the Michael Jordan, LeBron James debate episode. It is a very big task to undertake because I have promised in my first episode I would do this based on statistical fact and actual fact, and I want to get all the information I need for both sides of the argument. That is coming in the next couple of weeks. Also, in the next 2 weeks, I will have Tone and Alex from Row 7 and Cardboards and Cracker Jacks, respectively, on the podcast. We will wrap up the 2020 baseball season, get into the fact that we have awards coming up, and also all the changes with the New York Mets. The New York Mets. Because the Wilpons are gone. Steve Cohen is now the owner of the New York Mets, and he wrote a check. Not found investors. Wrote a check. $2.4 billion. He gets the ballpark. He gets the team. And he wants SNY. Guy grew up a Met fan. Let's see if he runs the team like a fan or if he runs the team like an owner. As always, Big Rican can be found in these 2 places. Facebook, Big Rican on Sports. YouTube, Big Rican on Sports. On Twitter, at Big Rican on Sport. On Instagram, at Big Rican on Sport. And, of course, Google, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Radio Public, and Pocket Casts. And I am a proud member of the Time Skew Podcast Network. Look for me tomorrow morning with Browns pregame. More importantly, OH, go Bucks.